Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Beautiful Wednesday evening here in beautiful downtown Burlington. We are really happy to have a local poet with us today, Diane Swan. This is her first book. She's had a chapbook published in the past. And this is a fabulous book. It's called The Other Wish. Diane is really local to Vermont. She's lived in Barre for many, many years, I think. And one of the things that I just found out about Diane today was that she really likes to bring poetry to some of our older residents and does workshops and poetry writing in some of the assisted living and places in town. And we're really excited to have Diane here tonight with reading from and talking about how she put it together, The Other Wish. Diane.
Thank you all for coming. So many wonderful familiar faces. And thanks to Phoenix Books for being such a good friend to books and writers. It's rare today and wonderful. I'd also really like to thank my friends from my workshops over the years who've critiqued my poems and cared about them. It's been a real gift to me. These poems were written over a period of many years, so don't be confused by a mention of my daughter as a little girl bringing home a goldfish, and then another poem about her as a mother having a daughter of her own. I kind of skipped all those books and went right to the collected works. So this is my collected works. The first poem I'm going to read is a small poem. They say, I heard a definition once of a poet being someone on whom nothing is lost, which is exhausting. But it's also hard for a poet as well to pay attention all the time. Pardon me. And this is a small poem about that effort. It's called Lunch. I am parked eating lunch when a logging truck rumbles by. Long, heavy lengths piled just so like unsharpened pencils. A man is walking the edges in a warm coat, neatly trimmed mustache, carrying a plastic bag. How wonderful is the here and now, November, Wednesday, at noon outside McDonald's, where, if I could just awaken, it would astound me, this paradise of a parking lot, the smell of frying, that small hill suddenly glowing, etched with leafless trees, a billion places for a bird to land. Not just a billion sold. This next poem is for Florence, my friend who's here. Some time ago, she told me about an event in her life that was very moving, and I was very moved by it as well, so I wrote a poem. She's also written a poem about it that's wonderful, and I apologize for writing from the outside, but when you wrote from the inside. But December night for Florence. At dusk, your black percheron is found at the edge of the woods, suffering tremors, foaming at the mouth. You grab a blanket and go out into the winter meadow where she fell, a dark mountain in the snow, and curl like the just born against her. You rock and cry hot tears, inhale the last of her sickness and sweat, take fistfuls of coarse winter fur in your hands. What are the stars, those old distant patterns of light, up against your mystical bodies, a woman and a mare, alone in the cold snow, this holy constellation we have yet to name? This next poem was written not when I was first started writing, but as most of you know, a lot of you here are writers, and when you first start writing, it's very scary. And this is about that. It's called Invitation. My husband is worried that I will leave the party and follow the house-sized crow into the woods. I stand in a clearing, the log cabin flickering behind me like a Japanese lantern, music pouring from the chimney, while around and around past windows, a carousel of shirts and bodices, wine glass glitter, yellow cheese. There is no sound but the small black bones of words stringing themselves on sentences, lives linking lives. I stand on a dirt path which, if it was afternoon, might be flecked with coins of light, but now is another texture of darkness, like the crow's black eye and beak, the sleek and shining body standing still on the path. And at its back, at the exact distance I am from the house, woods that go on forever, the way home is never your home. I stand here, that's all, between the cabin and the crow, wanting first darkness, then leaf-green coolness, silence, feeling myself drawn, a forked stick, toward a deep, uncovered well. One of the decisions I had to make about that poem, it was a dream, actually, the crow, and I dreamt this poem that I was standing on this path, and there was this house-sized crow, and just as I describe it, and it was terrifying. I remember I woke up in the middle of the night, terrified. And the decision I had to make as a writer was whether or not to say it was a dream. And so I decided not to say it was a dream. This is an older poem. This was about a neighbor of mine. It's called Jerry's Daughter. Now the old black dog with his hairless hips and one white eye is shut up in the house all day and moans for the girl, Jerry's daughter, who is being examined again in the state hospital, who is crazy about this dog and would hate to hear him crying like this, as I hate to hear it. I would prefer his bark, his bared teeth an inch from my hand, or any flexed muscle of rage, to the image I hold of her face, like a thumbed nickel, blurred, unsleeping. I don't know what put her there, but if she came home to this yard, to her dog, freed, nosing the leaf mold, retrieving the thrown stick again and again like a golden baton, I know it would stop. That small, sad siren that reminds me every day of where she is. Usually you write out of either discomfort or not knowing, or and that was extreme discomfort. I was actually trying to do something else, and I had to sit and try to write about it. This is a newer poem. It's called Anthony's Diner. Excuse me. It's a diner in St. Johnsbury, and I was facilitating writing workshops at St. Johnsbury Health and Rehab at the time, and I used to go there for lunch. Wonderful place for lunch. Anthony's Diner. Yes, to the fresh blueberry cobbler, even though I'm not hungry and it will double my bill. Because I'm on the verge of tears and can't finish my egg salad sandwich. Because this waitress who never smiles, whose eyes are hard from seeing, has somehow noticed my sadness. And when she offers the cobbler, there is that other thing in it. She and I, part of that small black teepee of crows I saw on the road this morning. All business, sharing this beautiful, violent day. It's amazing what small things can save us. You know? And we do them for each other, not even knowing sometimes. This next poem is called In May After Rain, and I'm kind of at a point in my life where I think a lot of people get to where you think to yourself, I've only got so much time, I need to focus. What's really important to me? What am I going to do? What am I going to spend my time doing? And I had actually been thinking about giving up gardening. And then I had this line that came into my head, and this poem is called In May After Rain. A man wants his wife to have a garden, to watch her through the window on her way from the car, put down the clumsy bag of groceries, bend over curled tongues of tulips, the tender arched canes of bleeding heart. To see her in the green past, before the forest of years grew over the open place. He wants her to come in, put the bag on the counter, empty into the cupboard those absolute shapes, cans and jars and boxes, sounds of open and close. Then go back to the garden, cut a few stems, prepare them at the sink with scissors and water, grape hyacinth, Bethlehem sage, and stand looking quietly past them into the infant spring, where he can walk up behind her, wrap his arms around her and say, "It's like magic," and have her agree. We've recently had some storms, and this poem is about worrying about the birds that are in my birdhouse. They're doing fine now, actually. This was last year I was worried about them. Actually, I think it was the year before. It's called Birdhouse. That's where it started, anyway. Chickadees nesting in the leaky birdhouse, back and forth, who made me extravagantly happy, have disappeared after a storm. And I am so afraid to undo the little hooks that fasten the floor of the drowned house, to find what I couldn't help. There are times that do not go away, and times that go away, and nothing takes their place. My wits are patched with leaves, and I can't remember what I am trying to remember. I am ready to leave on the path a shed skin for someone to find, take home, place the papery thing on a bookshelf, and marvel at the transparent souvenir life. While below the lost birds, the torn trees, in the shadows of tall grass, my heart, having broken at last, will grow younger and stronger, sail across the road and disappear. This next poem is an older poem, but Michael Ryan, who wrote the review that's on the back of my book, I spoke with him on the phone fairly recently, and he told me he still teaches this poem, so that gave it a gold star. And I thought, well, okay, I have to read that poem. It's called Legs. When I carried the lamb, its woolliness packed into my arms like white roses, its legs and hooves hung useless as cut stems until I released it. The black and white cattle, grazing the steep field, balanced like lead toys I picked up over and over just to put down and feel their 4 feet hit. Horses' legs still worry me, those brittle, dry branches, wrapped like the young trees in the orchard, bandaged white, thoroughbreds with legs unequal to their hearts. After work, my mother, smaller than me, would curl up on the couch, her legs tucked under like a cat, or I would find her crying on her bed, her legs below the knee dangling. In the dream, I am legless, crawling in a room full of rags. But in fact, as I stand in my jeans at the sink, the stray cat's kittens climb me like a beanstalk. My tower legs, my legs like trees. Nothing cheers you up like a litter of kittens, I'll tell you. Anybody who's ever had them in the house, they're really incredible. Make you really feel good. All right. This poem, again, came out of a discomfort. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this painting. It's called Fox Hunt, and it's a painting by Winslow Homer. And it's a snow scene with a fox. And I had always loved the painting. And then I saw a TV show where they talked about the painting, and it was interpreted in a different way than I was seeing it. And it's funny because it makes me think a lot about poetry and how, you know, all art requires to be completed by the viewer or the listener. Music, painting, you bring the other half to it. And it's been interesting for me as a writer because I just recently was given back my poems by a lovely young woman who wrote a review in a whole different way. And I saw them in a whole different way. And so anyway, this is called Fox Hunt a painting by Winslow Homer, collection Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. Am I the only one who thought the fox was hunting? No boiling pack of hounds, no urgent horses, no gentleman propped up in shiny boots. It was a loneliness so lovely, a single russet head against the snow, black ears alert toward the horizon, long pull of fur and white-tipped plume, front paw lifted like a silent question. Then the museum guide points out in the upper right-hand corner a cloud of crows, black feathered headdress of a god, stiletto beaks aimed earthward toward the animal. And I see the fox is trapped, stranded in the frozen ruts, a branch of scarlet berries embroidered on the velvet cold, forecasting blood. And I can never have it back. The fox on the trail of something sweet, a happiness, the silence swimming from that lifted paw, the prey I don't imagine safely missing. This poem is called Desire Lines, and it was started by that phrase, desire lines, and my finding out what desire lines actually are. And it's so evocative, isn't it? Desire lines. Does anybody know what desire lines are? Desire lines. These are the paths feet actually take across a yard or vacant lot. Shortcuts, like the ones cows make, pressing the grass down to a ribbon of dirt that leads to the lighted barn. Or maybe the fine black seams that curved over my mother's calves, or traced the long legs of pin-ups who stared coyly over their shoulders into the greasy garage. Barbed wire, dead ends, long looks across a room. What you want and what you think you want. Those tired armies, footsore, hungry, the crumbs they follow, trying to get home. And this poem, I was driving out on the islands, out on North Hero, and there's a farm out there. I think actually it's called the Savage Farm. I'm not sure if it's still there or not. And I saw this cow had just dropped a calf, so I had to stop and look. It's called Afterbirth, and I'm not a country girl, so this was new to me. In calendar pictures, the cow leans over her calf, a dry miniature of herself, as if the cow stork dropped it clean into her daisied field. But when I saw the afterbirth, bright red, hanging from her square backside, I stopped the car and walked up to the fence where she licked a shapeless package in the grass. I had to stay until it stood, hind end first, forelegs knuckled under until need unfolded them, and he was up, searching her warm belly to find the milk. I told the farmer, "Your cow had a calf just now in the field, wanting him to clean her up, take it away." Of course, he'd seen it many times, this vivid scarf she'd spun out of her body's jeweled insides, flag that made the rest recede, farm, the trees, the sky, all leach into a monochrome. Not apple red or lipstick or the bloody evening clouds, but red as deep and elegant as silk. This parachute her calf had ridden down. Kind of transformed my vision there. And something I don't do very often and I'm not particularly good at is cooking. But I inherited it, a lack of cooking. So anyway, this is called Cooking. Oh goodness, lost my time here, 34. cooking. To keep us safe from trichinosis and other hidden strains, I burned everything. Roast charred until the kitchen smoked, vegetables boiled cruelly dry. Our table held years of rubbery stews, chowders tainted with scald. You'd think I would have learned to be more gentle. But it wasn't until I dined in other people's kitchens. Plum cake, dill bread, lamb with rosemary, catfish with thyme dug from under the snow, that I found a nurture that was mine to give. Some things ripen out of season. Today, slicing radishes for salad, red and white as valentines, I place the gift of appetite, peppery on my tongue. We're hungry, and I'm making something good. Let's see. Do 4 poems. Yeah. This is a poem I wrote. We have a camp up in the Northeast Kingdom, up in North Concord. Anybody know where North Concord is? You do? Oh, good. You do. Very rustic, and then we have a raft. And it's, you know, when they tell you when you want to meditate, when you want to relax, you know, to think of some place that you're happy and you're relaxed. Well, that's the place for me, is on that raft in the pond, middle of the pond. This is called No Stopping It. The hard yellow bud of a bullhead lily has opened, rests its chin on the green bib of a leaf. Above the pond, 3 pale, shirtless men are climbing the peak of a high cottage roof with buckets of tar and books of shingles. They will, by August, be brown as work can make them. Stretched here on the raft, pedal and hammer, joy of silence and sound, after years of kneeling to children, to gardens, the slop and polish of dirty floors, I touch the rough skin of my knee, memory of falling, dirt and gravel ground into my flesh, sting of iodine making a blossom of the wound. How can I carry the weight of this tenderness? My back and legs rocked by the warm boards, and the full water under, with its rising and falling, its pack and unpack. This longing to tell, moving toward a desire not to speak. Okay, and this is the title poem from the books, The Other Wish. Before the dark dream is ended, and you still swim, blank and limbless, in the pounding bloodfall, all you want is to stay deep under, to live without light, like the deepest blind fish. But always the body surfaces to itself, sadness of arms and legs, the bed heavy with the weight you swam from. It is then that the other wish comes, and the leaves draw you to the window to see light, a yellow bird. And I'll just read one more poem. This is, I was going to read other poems that I didn't read. Well, anyway. Everyone here is familiar with Raggedy Ann. Raggedy Ann is, you know, has gone the distance. Raggedy Ann is still around. Isn't that wonderful? Oh. So I have a granddaughter now, and we bought a giant Raggedy Ann when she was born, you know, in that euphoria of... and actually, there's another one that I refer to in this poem that we have as well. This is the one. Driving Ann. It perks me up to drive around with Raggedy Ann in the back seat. Soft cloth body, almost as big as a child. Shoe button eyes, triangle nose in my rear view mirror. My mother, 87, has washed and ironed the calico dress, starched the white ruffled apron, repaired the red yarn wig, for Molly, my daughter's daughter, almost a year old. Cleaning out the attic years ago, my daughter grown and gone, in a frenzy of regret, I threw the doll away, stuffing leaking from her ripped leg. Then sleepless, went out into the cold hollow of the night to retrieve it from the garage, lit a lamp in the dark house, and sewed the red striped leg with tiny, careful stitches back together. Mother-daughter, we're all in this together, I tell Anne in the back seat, her stained I love you heart under the freshened clothes. Thank you for your attention. High caliber of attention listening to poetry. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or anything they would like to talk about? Or
I just found your poem's really moving.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I feel that I have to be moved in order to write, you know, and usually it's out of something I don't know where it's going, which of course, you know, is the process. Is when you're a writer, you follow, you don't lead. If you find yourself leading, you're in trouble. If you already know where you're going, you're not going anywhere. In my experience, anyway. And usually it starts with something very small, some very small thing, and an image or a phrase, and I'm sure you've all experienced that. But if anybody here has ever had a friend come up to them and say, "Oh, I have a great idea for a poem," you know, and you kind of look at them and you go, "Oh, that's not really where poems come from." They don't come from an idea. If you have an idea, write an essay, or it's quite a process. Right now I have a little phrase, and a friend of mine, actually an acquaintance that I don't see very often, and she isn't very well. She's actually in a wheelchair, and I went to visit her in Virginia briefly with my husband, and her spirit was just so amazing. And we were in her kitchen, and she looked outside on the patio, and there was a table, and this bee was out there buzzing around the surface of the table. And she just looked out there, and she said, "Oh, there he is again, my bee." And it's there in me. That's my bee is going to go somewhere. I don't know where. I haven't even entered it yet, but that's kind of the way it works for me. The process is to do that.
And as you've gotten older, has your lens changed?
Yes. I find it harder and harder to pay the kind of attention, especially in a culture with so much distraction, where we're bombarded by stimulation all the time in every way. And a lot of it's good, but it seemed like years ago I could pay attention with a finer eye, and actually also as you get older, the heart line of your life changes. You know, when you're young, it goes like this, you know, and then you get older and it just starts to even out a little more. And so your highs aren't quite as high and your lows aren't quite as low. So you don't have the urgency that you have when you're young. And also, I think, to a certain extent, the self-absorption. I'm actually trying to widen my vision and look into the bigger world. And what happens then is, though, that I get more ideas, and I can't really write those poems. I'm finding that I have ideas in the way of the poems these days. So, I don't know. But anybody else? Judy?
Well, Diane, I just love your poetry.
Oh, thank you.
You know, the way that you balance the imagery that fills your life with this very vulnerable commentary.
Thank you.
You know, it's not exactly imagery and abstraction. It's more like imagery and connection or vulnerability.
Oh, thank you.
Way.
Thank you.
You have points where some
No, no. I'm in love with imagery. I mean, I fell in love with metaphor and simile when I was in high school. And when I wrote an essay and I compared called Woman on the Bus, and I compared her head, which was, she had a top knot and her hair was all skinned up, and I compared her head to a tortured grapefruit. And I got an A, and my teacher wrote on the essay, very perspicacious, and I had to look it up. And it was just, you know, it was a defining moment for me. And I just love seeing something in terms of something else. It just, so imagery seems to be the door to feeling for me. It's the door to what I feel. And I don't consciously make a decision. It's a great gift when that shift happens in a poem. I feel like when I'm working with an image and trying to revise according to the image, rereading and seeing where I am and, you know, what kind of a country I'm describing or whatever, and then something else comes into my mind that is maybe more abstract, and allowing that to happen in the poem, allowing the poem to get away from me in that way. But it's not conscious. I wish it was, because I would do it over and over. I would do anything that would make, you know, that would make the poem work. And it's just so funny, the whole process. Some poems you just think are going to work, and you keep knocking on them, and the door doesn't open. And but it's very exciting, and it's what I love. I've loved words ever since I was a kid, and I still am so excited by a good bumper sticker. You know, I really am. It's or a good advertising campaign, or, you know, just language, and the manipulation of it is so wonderful and so much fun for me. It's our currency. It's how we are with each other. It's what we have to be together. So, yeah, Marianne.
I'm thinking of this particular metaphor you used that just really struck me. I think you were talking about a water lily, but you used the word the bib of the leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah.
It struck me because it made such a clear image. It was
good.
such the perfect word, and yet it was such an unusual word that it's come up with. So do you play with that and try and come up with more interesting kinds of words?
What I'm trying to do more of actually is write a lot, and then have a lot of dead wood that I can cut to get to those images. Oftentimes I find an image and I will write 3 images, and one of them will survive revision. I'm sure you know that process yourself. And it's funny because I was just looking back at drafts of that poem, and I had this is where your friends come in. I had a line before it that was, rests its head on the pillow of the water, or something like that. And then under it I had, rests its chin on the bib of a leaf, on the green bib of the leaf. And I had crossed it out, and I'm sure somebody said to me, not pillow, you know, drop the pillow. And, you know, it's a wonderful process. But when you see something like that, it's a gift to see it that way. And I did see it that way. It wasn't like I tried a number of different images. I put them all down and then try to take the best one. But you know, it delights you when you're given something like that. I mean, as a writer, it's just so exciting, and you see it that way. But
so what is your process? Do you write every day?
No, all I do is I keep a notebook all the time. You know, a little small notebook. I brought it with me, and then my process is to go through the note. I'm usually haunted by something enough to want to sit down and write about it. An image, a couple of words. You know, I remember. I know I've told this story before, but it's one I've never forgotten. John Ingalls, who taught at St. Michael's, I'm sure you're familiar with his work. He was a wonderful poet. He talked about getting a line and pinning it up on a 3x5 card on a bulletin board, and basically waiting for the poem to show up. And the line in particular was the great green opening stone of the earth. I've never forgotten it because it's such a gorgeous line. The great green opening stone of the earth. And he lost a child quite young, and he and his wife did. And it turned out that that's the poem that line went into. And I'm sure at the time he probably didn't have any idea where it was going to go. So that's always wonderful when people share, their process. And that's kind of what I do. I just kind of take a piece of something and hope that it will divide and write out of it. But I keep a notebook, and I usually write on a pad, on a 8.5 by 11 lined pad, pages and pages longhand before I sit down and put it on the word processor. Because the word processor tends to make everything look good. For me, anyway. I mean, no, it makes it look neat, because, and my drafts are full of squirrels and crosses and squiggles and fitting things in at the bottom of the page, and, they very chaotic. And somehow or another, when it's still like that, it allows me to keep moving it around. When I type it, it seems to lock it in a way that sometimes will shut me down, Because the other part of the process in writing is that you're writing this poem and you want to get it. You want to get the poem and you want to get out of there. I mean, that's I shouldn't say you, the royal you, but you want it done. You want to get it. You keep waiting. You keep saying, come on, I know it's there somewhere. And sometimes you'll get to a great line and you'll go, whew, oh, that's done. I'm done. I don't have to work any more on that, And then you take it to a workshop and everybody looks at you and says, no, you need to write more about that. And, it's a wonderful process. It's very, very exciting. And I share it with so many people here. It's wonderful. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate your attention and your help over all the years. And thank you. It's quite wonderful. Yes, it was a now or never moment. And I'm very glad I have it. Thank you very much. Thank you for the Phoenix.